We all have our moments where our communication gets in the way of the connection that we long for with our spouse. And if we want to change that, it starts by looking at what specifically is not working in our communication. Join me today as we look at the 5 signs we are not communicating well with our spouse. A marriage is created in communication. When we consistently choose life-giving conversations, our marriage will be full of life. When our conversations are more unloving and defensive battles to be won, our marriage will be weary and despairing. I know this well. As a wife of 30 plus years and a couples coach, my name is Julia Woods, and I'm passionate about helping couples create life-giving communication so they can have the marriages they long for. And if you want that, make sure to click the subscribe button so you don't miss an episode. The path to creating the marriage you long for is in your communication. If you change the way you communicate, you will change your marriage. So let's look at 5 important signs in our communication that are pointing to where to start the work to transform our marriages. The first important sign is if you're interrupting your spouse. This is a sign pointing to an area where growth is needed. In conversations, we're either listening to learn and grow or listening to prove and protect. Life-giving communication occurs as we learn and discover about our spouse and how they see the world. When you interrupt, it's a sign that you are proving and protecting what you've decided you already know. Rather than listening to learn something about your spouse or consider something different than what you think, you are cutting them off so you can get them to see what you think. Life-giving communication begins when 2 people are willing to hear and learn from one another. The next time you notice you interrupt your spouse, simply acknowledge and ask them to finish what they were saying and work to really listen generously. The second sign is wherever you are assuming. That's a sign pointing to work that you need to do. We have all heard that assuming makes an ass out of us, yet we do it all the time and we don't even recognize it. We typically don't find out we have made an assumption until later when things don't go the way we thought they would go. When a conversation is tension-filled, our tendency to assume is even greater. We assume we know what our spouse is about to say or what it is that they are going to do or how they will feel. But when we are assuming, we are completely missing who they are in that moment. Remember, as humans, we are becomings. We say we want our spouse to grow and change, but we assume things about them. We block the possibility that they could be becoming new. If you want life-giving conversations, you will need to grow your ability to interrupt your assumptions and ask clarifying questions about everything. When you really start doing this, I can guarantee you, your spouse will surprise you. The third sign that we aren't doing well, being good in communication, is we speak in absolutes. As humans, we love to control situations to get the results we want. One of the ways we do that is we speak in absolutes. We say things like, "You always do this," or "You never do this." If we can convince our spouse that they never do what we want them to do, then we can win the battle and prove that they are the problem. The truth is, as humans, there really aren't absolutes. If your spouse drops their clothes on the floor 9 out of 10 times, they don't always do it. They often do it. When you speak in absolutes, you block your ability to partner with your spouse to create something new. When you notice you are speaking in absolutes, stop and shift your language to what is more truthful by using words like sometimes, often, or at times you do this. The fourth sign you aren't communicating well is you exaggerate. This is another common way that we as humans work to control or manipulate conversations with our spouse. When we're in a conversation to prove our point or to be right about what we have decided is true, we will make things bigger than they actually are in hopes that we will leave our spouse speechless and unable to make an opposing argument. We say things like, "I've told you a million times to do this. Or if you do it again, I will lose my mind. Or we say something that, they did was way bigger than it actually was. When we do this, we are working to shame, belittle, or condemn our spouse for the choice they made. Life-giving conversations grow out of humbly expressing what we're feeling and desiring and partnering with our spouse to bring that about. The next time you notice you're exaggerating, stop yourself. Communicate honestly what you're experiencing. It can make a big impact and actually create the conversation you want to have. And the fifth sign that you are communicating badly is you complain versus request. Complaining is what we do when we are trying to change our spouse so we can have what we want. Complaining actually kills our brain cells and informs the hippocampus of our brain that we are not interested in solving our problems or bringing about our desires. We expect our spouse to change so we don't have to. It's easy to think that if we complain, our spouse will do what we want them to do and all will be resolved. By complaining actually creates bitterness and resentment for both people. Life-giving conversations occur when each spouse takes 100% responsibility for what they long for and partners with their spouse by making requests and renegotiating matters to be a win-win for both of you. The next time you notice you are complaining to your spouse, stop and get clear about what it is that you want. Then ask your spouse for that. Work together to find what works for both of you. You can communicate in life-giving ways. Nothing is wrong with you. You aren't destined to be a bad communicator. You simply need to notice where you're poorly communicating with your spouse and choose to turn what you just said into something that communicates in the way that they can hear and partner with you to create something new. If you want additional support with this, I invite you to take my quiz to help you learn more about your communication style. You can find the link in the description below. If you enjoyed this episode, would you give it a thumbs up and share in the comments below one thing that you're taking away? Hey, hon.
Yeah.
Which of the 5 bad communication signs is most hurtful for you?
Probably the exaggeration.
I didn't know that.